In a Catholic church in Highland Park, Michigan, Walt Kowalski, a Korean War veteran, greets people at his wife Dorothy's funeral. His expression turns into a scowl as he notices the inappropriate clothes and disruptive behavior of his spoiled grandchildren. Walt's two sons, Mitch and Steve, describe their father as always disappointed without realizing their own disrespectful behaviors. As Father Janovich delivers the eulogy, Walt disdains the priest's shallow speech about life and death. After the service, everyone gathers at his house. Father Janovich attempts to fulfill a promise to Dorothy by persuading Walt to go to confession. However, Walt refuses and insults Father Janovich for being young and allegedly knowing nothing about life or death. Walt fills his days with household chores, meticulously caring for his cherished 1972 Gran Torino, relaxing on his front porch, smoking and drink beer in the company of his senior Labrador, Daisy. Living next door is a Hmong immigrant family, including a shy young man named Tao, his feisty sister Sue, and their widowed mother and grandma. Walt expresses discontent towards the changing neighborhood, resentful of virtually everything he sees, the drying lawns and the foreign faces in his neighborhood. He refers them as barbarians. One day, Thao is walking down the street when a Latino gang starts harassing him. A local Hmong gang, led by Thao's cousin Spider, arrives and intimidates the Latinos, forcing them to flee. The Hmong gang then pressures Thao to join them. Later, the gang shows up at Tao's house, coercing him into joining them. When Tao finally relents, they assign him the initiation task of stealing Walt's Gran Torino. That night, Walt is awakened by a noise in his garage and catches Tao in the act of stealing the car. Walt points a rifle at Tao's face. They both trip and Tao manages to escape. The next day, Spider and his gang return, angered by Tao's failed his initiation, but willing to give him another chance. The gang continues trying to assimilate Tao and try to take him by force. His family desperately defends against Spider and his cohorts. A fight breaks out. Crossing the line from Tao's house and onto Walt's property and breaking his gnome, Walt comes outside and threatens the gang with his rifle and orders them to get off his lawn. They leave and warn Walt to watch his back. The next morning, Walt discovers gift and food left on his porch by Hmong neighbors. Sue tells him that he is considered a hero in the community for protecting Tao. Walt is uncomfortable to be in this position and asks to be left alone. Father Janovich visits Walt, expressing his displeasure over Walt's decision not to call the police and reminding him of his late wife's desire for him to go to confession. Walt refuses. When Walt is driving home one day and notices 3 guys sexually harassing Sue, he steps in, confronts them with a pistol, and takes Sue with him. In the car, Sue explains Hmong culture, sharing that many Hmong people moved to the United States because they sided with the U.S. during the Vietnam War, and they had to escape when the communists began killing them. Walt admits to liking Sue but considers Tao a moron. However, he changes his perspective when he sees Tao helping a woman pick up her groceries. On Walt's birthday, his son Mitch and his wife Karen visit him, bringing a cake and a few gifts in an attempt to convince Walt to move into a retirement home. Aware of their motives to acquire his house, Walt growls in anger and promptly kicks them out. Sue invites Walt to a barbecue next door, bringing him closer to her family. Walt decides to join because he is out of beer. In the house, Walt learns that Hmong people avoid making eye contact and never touch others on the head. Walt starts coughing up blood. He rushes to the bathroom to splash water on his face and realizes he has more in common with the Hmong than his own family. Through the Hmong family's kindness, he begins to enjoy the gathering. Later, he engages in a conversation with Tao in the basement, trying to convince Tao to be less shy and encouraging him to ask out a nice young woman Tao is interested in. Walt is approached by Tao's family, insisting that traditionally Tao is required to work for Walt for a week to make amends for attempting to steal the Gran Torino. The following week, Walt has Tao fix up other houses in the neighborhood that have fallen into disrepair. Walt visits the doctor after discovering blood when he coughs. The results of his examination indicate concerning health issues. He calls his son Mitch, but finds it difficult to bring himself to share the news. Instead, he awkwardly makes small talk. Mitch says that he is too busy and hangs up. Over time, their relationship develops an unlikely bond that gradually changes both of their lives. Walt starts to genuinely enjoy spending time with them, even lending his Gran Torino for Tao's date. He helps Tao's family by fixing their faucet, takes Tao to his barber to teach him how to talk confidently and manly. Walt also assists Tao in securing a construction job and helps him in buying tools. One day, Tao is walking home alone after work when Spider and his gang rob him in the alley, grinding a lighted cigarette on Tao's cheek. When Walt discovers this, he uncovers the gang's hangout, beats up one of its members, and threatens them to stay away from Tao and his family. The gang retaliates by attacking Tao's house, firing guns through the window. Walt rushes over to check on them and discovers Tao has wounded in the neck. They find out Sue is supposed to be at her aunt's house but never arrived. Later that night, Sue staggers into the house having been severely injured and sexually assaulted. Walt storms home, punching cupboards and hurting his knuckles in anger, and sits in the dark with a tear on his face. Father Janovich visits him and informs him that the family refuses to report to the police out of fear. Walt says Tao and Sue will never find peace until the gang is gone. The priest asks Walt what he is going to do. Walt responds he is not sure yet, but whatever it is, they won't have a chance. The next morning, Tao comes over and urges Walt to take vengeance on the gang with him. Walt first tells him to calm down and wait, as revenge must be planned carefully. He asks Tao to return later in the afternoon. Walt spends the day calmly mowing his lawn, taking a bath, getting himself a haircut, and buying a new tailored suit. He then goes to church and asks to make a confession finally. Walt confesses 3 minor sins he committed, but he refuses to tell Father Janovich what he is going to do. When Tao returns to Walt's house that afternoon, Walt brings him to the basement and gives him the Silver Star medal he earned in Korea. However, he tricks Tao and locks him in the basement. Walt tells Tao about a sin that haunted him every day, saying he doesn't want him to live with the consequences of killing someone. Walt then leaves Daisy with Tao's grandma and calls Sue, telling her where to find the key to his basement so she can let Tao out. Meanwhile, Father Janovich is with 2 police officers outside the gang's house on a stakeout. Father Janovich suspects that Walt may try to have a violent confrontation with the gang. However, nothing happens, and the sergeant eventually recalls the officers, taking Father Janovich to leave with them. Sue arrives at Walt's house to let Tao out of the basement. Tao hurriedly explains that Walt left him there, and they quickly make their way to the Hmong gang house. Walt confronts the gang outside their house for their crimes, capturing the attention of the neighbors. He points his fingers at each one, slowly wearing on their nerves. The gang members draw their guns on him. Walt takes a cigarette from his jacket, puts it in his mouth, and then slowly reaches into his jacket, quickly pulling his hand out. Believing he is reaching for a gun, the gang members immediately open fire. Walt falls to the ground, riddled with bullet holes, revealing he had grabbed a lighter, not a weapon. Tao and Sue arrive at the crime scene just as Walt's body is being loaded into an ambulance. The police inform them that with the community ready to testify, the gang will face a lengthy imprisonment. Tao still wears Walt's Silver Star on his shirt, stares at the gang as they are escorted into police cars. A funeral service is conducted for Walt, with Father Janovich delivering a memorable eulogy. Tao and his family attend the funeral in traditional Hmong clothing, in contrast to Walt's large, extended family. During the reading of Walt's will, it's revealed that Walt left his house to the church, honoring his late wife's wish and his Gran Torino to Tao, with the stipulation that he does not modify it. Tao drives the Gran Torino down a lakeshore road with Daisy next to him. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.